I'm Stacey Hensley. I'm the Senior Product Manager here at Quorum Products. I'm here today with Cody Clark. He's the Vice President of Business Development at Utah Gas. Cody, do you want to give a little bit of background around what you do and some of the interaction you've had here at Quorum?
Yeah. So we are a energy company, and I like to use energy as in that space because our goal is to be as vertically integrated as possible. We're kind of half and half between Western Colorado and Eastern Utah. We own essentially from wellbore to tailgate of the plant. We've got about 1,200 operated wells. We've got about 30 midstream customers. We have the opportunity to deliver into 3 different indexes, 3 different plants all in the same month. And, today we have been with Quorum Live from a production month, about 6 months. We're using kind of, I guess, the Quorum suite of FLOWCAL, TIPS, FI, and currently going through a well lease transition.
Okay, yeah. So lots of Quorum products. We love to hear that. So what's kind of been some of your experience? I know we talked a little previously about kind of your FLOWCAL to tips and some of the time saving that's had with y'all, kind of eliminating some PPAs, some things like that. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, and I think like to preface that for me personally is I'm not your conventional accountant, right? And I say that kind of ambiguously because I could see why Quorum hires a lot of engineers, because when you really get down and from a 10,000 foot view into a 1 foot view, it makes a lot more sense. This is really chemistry and movement across pipe. So one, forgive me in my ignorance of PPAs and everything. I typically my role is started as land and has evolved into doing all of our commercial contracts and then kind of into this because it had to be. But for us, we grew rapidly from 2017. So just as kind of a baseline, we had in 2016 we had 41 wells, and in 2022 we have 1,400, a midstream company, a service company, as well as 3 different operating companies. And so with that, we realized that our tech specs, our tech packages needed to move kind of with that. And we in 2021 we kind of found a major deficiency in our midstream accounting and really our midstream portfolio. And one of the first issues was, like you have FLOWCAL with its a great diversity and availability to access the other products versus your kind of cloud. But we needed something to fit that. And that's when we started to interview you guys really for the Quorum tips piece. And now we have that integration, which has allowed us to not have really any PPAs that were unintended, right? I mean, this is the business of counting molecules. So we absolutely have revisions and we want to be able to run our business, but I think it's allowed us to be a lot more efficient and not have additional people. For instance, it was never my job to really run the system, and we're transitioning that, but we're running all of our midstream company and our upstream company really with one person handling it from wellbore to the end on a kind of allocation perspective.
I know one of the things you've mentioned in the past was, and just now you're not an accountant by trade, but I know you've handled like a lot of your tip setups and some of those configurations and some of the time savings that you've mentioned in the past around, like how quick you're able to close now versus before. Can you kind of elaborate on that and kind of how the approach you've taken to really kind of dig in and figure some of this stuff out?
Yeah. So like Utah Gas Corp, I think, I don't know if it's anything specialized or different than what else is doing, but we have a very small management team. And so you get pulled into a lot of different directions, which means you need to understand the business and from a lot of different perspectives. And so for me, I've got a personal affliction with understanding everything. It's been one of the things that I struggle with from a management piece of not being able to do it and being a young manager. But like what TIPS has done is like really being able to see into those allocations, and I call them user friendly, right? Because like it's simple math and algebra, but as long as you understand your system, you can see kind of what the drive is on the TIPS piece. And to me, that's a really big win for us. And what I think also it does is we, in the past, have been handcuffed a little bit by our technology packages. from a growth pattern. We don't do transition services agreements. So once that PSA is signed, particularly in the midstream world, right, you've got 30 days to onboard this thing. Your measurements really got to start coming. You got to load your history, and then you've got really, post that first 30 days, another 15 days to be able to settle your first month. And so we needed something that had that fluidity and upstream. And we also don't buy everything with the same ownership structure. And so one of the benefits for us as TIPS is we've got this, we'll call it a commingled system between two of our sister companies or entities within, and it allows us to be able to do both very quick contractual satisfactions as well as physical allocations.
Okay. Yeah, I know we've talked again just on like as you're going through these, acquisitions, you have very short TSA periods, if any at all. Um, how has, partnering with Quorum, um, what are your thoughts, down the road? I know you're looking at adding additional products as well, but like how are y'all handling onboarding those assets and some of those kinds of things as you grow and partnering with Quorum for that growth?
Yeah, I mean, I think, right, my main role is kind of what I'm supposed to be doing is acquisition and divestiture, right? I'll say this experience of getting tips and understanding the package both from the Quorum in general is going to make me a better due diligence person, right? And as I've told you, when we first started, one of my biggest concerns with Quorum from day one was, you guys are a big company, you're kind of the industry standard, but the customer service, and I don't want to be a number. And I would say you guys have done a very great job. I mean, obviously Stacey's sitting here with me, and I'm not enterprise, One Oak, et cetera. And because of the way we run our business, we've had just some very complicated things that you guys have been more than willing to work with us, and I appreciate that. But what I think this does is it gives us kind of two things: fluidity to do both midstream, upstream, et cetera, but also, right, that look, and I think it's gonna, right, as Quorum continues to build your guys' product and your guys' decks with all your members, the likelihood of us buying another midstream asset with tips is high. And so that's an extreme cost. When you look at onboarding another asset, typically technology is your number one cost to get that onboarded, whether that's your SCADA measurement, allocation driver, accounting software. So, right, I mean, we're always kind of open to that, but I think that's really where we're going to look for in the future.
Okay. One of the things that's a little unique, as we kind of, got to know y'all a little more and how you were going to use the system, is y'all are a completely core install of tips, of FLOWCAL, of FI. So you don't have any customizations. That's a little unique in this day and age. So can you talk a little bit about kind of how that helps maybe as you're bringing on new assets and kind of as these timelines and just even training on your side, how being able to be on a completely core solution with no customizations has helped?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's actually a really great point. Like, and I preface that with, I don't have your experience. So I only, like, I'm kind of a little bit of a blank slate. I see what I see today. But what I can tell you is I've run tips. I've settled a plant every month for 6 months. Prior to July of 21, I've never even logged into tips. And I think it says really two things. It says something about the product. It says something about your professional services team, which was great. Right, we worked a lot of hours. We actually transitioned this whole thing in about 5 months to active, and we're on time with this piece. But the core piece is nice because it allows someone with limited to no experience who is hungry the opportunity to really drive and understand it, right? I mean, we're not a set and go allocation guy. I think in 6 months that we've settled on a production date, I've adjusted our allocation personally every single month and tweaked the system. And that says a lot to kind of the subway map and the way where QCloud is sitting back up on this tips piece.
Okay. So, Cody, I know one of the other things we've kind of talked about, we touched a little about you're using the core solution, no customizations. That also goes along with reports. I mean, almost every system out there has some core bucketed reports that are available. I know y'all have utilized some of those, but y'all are also fully on the web. You're utilizing our interactive reports for a lot of ad hoc reporting. Can you maybe talk a little about kind of how you've seen some of the benefits from that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, right, one of the things that you have to be good at within our organization is you have to be able to run a lot of different technologies. So currently I'm, proficient or better than proficient about 5 packages. And what I found and learned day one is if your inability to query something, or if the system's limited to its query ability, makes it difficult. What I will say is Tips has the most user-friendly online querying abilities that I've ever been around, right? Just the ability, whether you're in an interactive report, to do either an advanced report or a regular report, because you got to remember we're checking our allocations every single month because it could have gone 3 different ways, and we found some things that need to make an adjustment, and Stacey and team have done a really great job on helping us get there. And then you check obviously your statements, your fixed fuels, you've got your fees, etc. But another really big piece of our system is the revenue section, right? So we had to build this custom report that uploads into our accounting software, which means it had to have formatting in certain sections. It had to be layered out. It had to sum stuff up. We had to convert our gallons back to barrels. So like that ability to do that really helps you become more seamless within and outside of the system.
Yeah, I think that's a great example. A lot of times when you're interfacing to a revenue system that's not part of Quorum, we would have to, in the past, we would always build out some type of custom export that was, custom to you. No one else was going to use it. And the ability to just use these ad hoc reports to kind of get you what you need. And then you can use that as your upload, and you can tweak as you need it. If something changes, then you're not having to come back to us and ask for, I've got to log this enhancement request and things like that. So that's great to hear that y'all are able to utilize the interactive reports that way.
Yep.
So one other thing is, I know y'all are kind of just getting started. Y'all are still buying stuff. You're still looking at things like that. I know one of the things that y'all chose to go with was our Q Cloud. So to be hosted versus going on-prem, where y'all are, don't need a big IT shop to be able to do that. Can you speak a little bit about kind of some of your experiences with Q Cloud?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really valuable point. Like, in my opinion, in this century, to be a very successful, particularly mid-cap oil and gas company, technology has to be your friend. But right, I mean, I think Quorum could speak to this louder than anyone. Technology is not cheap to manage, onboard, or deal with on the day-to-day, right? I mean, like, it's very like, just think about you guys use Salesforce, and just seeing that spec that you have, depending on the problem, I can only imagine the back-end cost. We realized really early in kind of our journey that we wanted to be a tech company, but we didn't necessarily want to employ a large tech team. One, because it's burdensome from a capital perspective, and second, you need someone to manage that, right? And that person really may not be oil and gas specific or energy specific, and that's their job, is really to understand, right, Python, SQL, some sort of database, right? Where for us, security is obviously number one, which you guys have seen, and across anyone who's been in the nation knows what that feels like. So we didn't want someone too small in that aspect, because we needed someone with history, and I think that's where Quorum has played a great piece. But kind of when you look at your tech package, you guys have like this sphere in the middle that, whether it's talking to, whether Tips is talking to FI or FLOWCAL or Wellies or etc., whether it's doing that today, it has an easy transition to be able to do that. And so for us, like, getting that data and having that secure gateway into it, and understanding that we own the data, and Quorum has never been adversarial about that piece, gave us the comfortability with going with Q Cloud rather than hosting our own stuff, because ultimately you guys are doing the labor and we're just backing it up in the event there was ever a major issue with Q Cloud.
Yeah, one of the things we've really focused on probably over the last couple of years is the integration between our products. FlowCal is the leader in the measurement space. We really view ourselves as a leader in the midstream solution space from a tips perspective. And, having those two talk to each other was huge. You have that real time integration. I know y'all have had a lot of success with that and can build on it. We're still looking from a tips perspective of where else it makes sense for us to kind of build on some of that. So it's good to hear that y'all see the value in that as well.
Yeah. No, I mean, this is like, I think we talked a little bit about this at Connections, and Gabe Terrell can do a much better job of discussing this than I can. So please don't take this to go listen to what he had to say. But what we really kind of realize is that, in my opinion, in our ownership's opinion, if you're not growing as an energy company, you should either sell or figure out something else, because you think you're always working yourself out of a job by pulling, precious resources out of the ground. And so you need something that kind of fits that. And that's really kind of, I think, where we chose this direction and have been really happy with you and kind of your leadership and ability to access, right? And so for me, Carolyn, forgive this, but now I'm going to ask the Stacey questions, none of which have been hosted. And so, right, I'll say, this is kind of a little bit out of the bounds, but through this experience, I know Stacey has a lot of customers who bring more capital into this business than I do, but I want to say, and she's going to hate this, that I very much appreciate you and your ability when I have had issues to work through, right? Like I said before, there's no finish line in gas plant allocation. There's no finish line in technology. There's no finish line in statements and revenue. It's an ever evolving project. And so your willingness to work with us and understand that I'm the guy, and I think we have a lot of the same similarities, that you have to kind of be in it and know if it's 100% right. And so, kind of understanding your history, you've been tips, I don't know, day one, because I'm not going to age you, but you started there.
Thank you.
And then now you've gone and see kind of the hurdles, trials, tribulations. What do you think the biggest change in the tips product specifically it is from your days back at DCP to today?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I'm not going to age myself. Was a tips user for many, many years as a customer before I came to Quorum, and really just seeing the evolution of tips. So we went from the classic application to now being on the web, much more modern look and feel, the interactive reports. That's something you never would have been able to build out with classic, like what we've done with the web. And just being able to get a customer like Utah Gas on a completely core solution, I think speaks volumes to the product as well as Quorum. We're putting the investment into our products. A very large part of, our revenue every year goes back into our products, around 25%, which is more than most other companies. But seeing that evolution from, the old classic application to being fully on the web, as we have more and more customers that are transitioning, all of our new customers are only fully web. So, I don't think you even knew classic existed until not too long ago, which is what we love to hear.
They don't like I have a button pushing problem. So.
Yeah, Cody's a button pusher, so we don't want him in classic. But no, just the evolution of tips over the last, tips has been around for 20 something years. And really over the last few years, seeing that evolution to being a much more modern interface, and getting the feedback from customers like you, is valuable as we continue to grow the product. So.
Okay. Let me ask you, and this is completely unrehearsed. Is there a company too big to transition from on-prem to cloud?
No. I think any of our customers could be hosted. I don't think that's an issue.
What about let's just say there's a large mid-space company that grows, that starts from nothing, and let's say they're on a different product. Can they go directly onto cloud in your mind, regardless of size, contractual complication, et cetera?
Yeah, I think they could. We have, you've thrown out a few names as we've kind of been talking here, but we have some very large customers that, choose to remain on-prem for now. There's a few of them that we've been having some conversations with. And I think as they transition to the web, not having to have a fully staffed IT department speaks volumes. And I think that's something some of the larger energy companies that we deal with are starting to look at more and more is, do they really need the staff of 50 IT people, or can it be 3? So really kind of looking at some of that. And I think part of it is as they grow confidence in our Q Cloud abilities, as well as, tips moving to the web, getting the rest of the screens finished and some of that stuff. I think we're going to see more and more of it.
Okay, so now that I've ruined Stacey's day, I guess like kind of in closing for me, when I look back at our experience and just like I said, being kind of a blank slate, one of the things that I would just not say surprised me, but it's kind of surprised the organization is through our implementation, as well as our customer support relationships and head of customer support, we found that like was predominantly filled with non-accountants, which to me, right, when you hire the position, it's gas plant accountant. And so, right, you've been here for, I think you told me 6 years now.
Almost 7.
And so like, I'm sure you've had an idea that seems really non-traditional, but maybe you could fill me in like why and what's Quorum's perspective and your personal perspective on going that direction.
Yeah. So I'm an accountant by trade. That's what my degree is in. But as I was a customer previously, I found I liked more the technical approach. Little funny, I'm an accountant who does not like math. I know, a little weird. But I've very much enjoyed the analytical side of it. And that's kind of what, like, growing up on tips, gave me a lot of experience around being able to analyze like how things are working and things like that. And we have a lot of chemical engineers here at Quorum, which probably seems a little odd for a software company. Don't get me wrong. We do have people with computer science degrees here, but a lot of chemical engineers, because just the nature of the oil and gas business, being able to understand how those components are used, what a gas plant does, kind of gives a good perspective. Anyone can do addition. So it's really, yeah, I know. Yeah, same here. But really just, just having that, I guess, kind of that analytical ability. Not that accountants don't have analytical abilities, because again, I'm an accountant by trade. That's what my degree is. But just bringing in those chemical engineers and just engineers in general, just because it's kind of the nature of what we do, being able to understand that part. I don't know really how many accountants we have at Quorum from a product perspective. I think there's a few others on our product side that have some accounting backgrounds, but yeah, by far we have more engineers here than accountants. So it is a little different makeup.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because like it brings, like as like we grow, like my goal is obviously to be managing this midstream piece and trying to think about, right, like our org chart is such a great example. Like, okay, is this an accounting function? And I, myself and my CEO, Aaron Martinson, had a big discussion the other day, and I said, it's not, you have to look at it as processes and not numbers, and you needed a system that can show you the processes. Because like you said, the numbers really are not that difficult. It's the processes, it's the visualization of it. And it really brought me back, and I actually brought this, and I said, this is probably why Quorum hires engineers, because it's processes, it's analytics, it's the ability to view the system in your head, which I think is what we're doing. And you guys are that kind of that bonder to get it there. And so it's always been, at first I was like, it doesn't make sense. But today it's like, I'm like, well, again, I was wrong. And so I like to get your opinion on it. And like I said, if they can train a landman to settle a plant, then we're doing a pretty good job. So.
Yeah.
Well, Cody, I really appreciate you sitting down with me today. Always love talking to you. I think Utah Gas has a great story. Love that we're partners in this, and can't wait to see kind of how much more y'all grow.
Yeah, and we're looking to potentially do helium in 2022. So I'll let you guys know how that function works.
Hey, I have some helium experience. Well, thanks again, Cody. It was great talking with you. So, all right.